So I wanted to say just some quick points. Hi, Barbara. We're just starting the recording. Point one is, if you're watching this video, send Joan an email. You have her email address. We're interested in knowing how many people watch the video but don't or can't participate in the call. And the other point is that we're planning to take the summer off and reconvene in September. And so, Steve, the real-time thought occurs to me, maybe we repeat this same session in September with more people. Well, maybe we can revisit that at the end on, should we do this again? Anyway, that's all I had for kind of administrative things. I'm complete.
Well, you know, and Joe, some of the groups I'm involved in are not quite at the 40 days yet. So it would also give us an opportunity to kind of follow up for those groups that are kind of, I don't know, at the beginning of them, entering into them in the third or fourth treatise, and we'll be getting into them. So, yeah, that's a good idea.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi. Hello.
So let me go ahead and start sharing some slides. There are a few slides I want to go through. I always have slides. I'm a slide-aholic, but I can stop anytime. So these are the facilitating Course of Love gatherings, the art of taking heart, an interactive Zoom gathering. And here's kind of our flow for the day. I want to review our guidelines and review a slide that seems to be evolving around what it means to be a facilitator. We'll have an opening meditation without a slide, and then we'll go back to some slides on 5 different quotes from the Course of Love related to the 40 days and the mountaintop experience. And then I don't know if you notice these questions, these same questions in the email that Joan sent out, but we're going to review those during the open discussion part. And Steve's going to lead the Course of Love quotes in the open discussion. And then we'll have a closing meditation and kind of at the end review what next. And I guess what next is going to be in September. So just wanted to recap our guidelines. We haven't really spent much time with these, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but and this I think applies for not only this gathering, but as facilitators, when we facilitate a group, whether online or in person, to be observant of the spirit that exists. Contribute to the ideas, add to the ideas being discussed, be succinct in shares, and this is often a challenge in groups where people tend to want to, I like to hear myself talk, like I'm hearing myself talk right now, but you know, it's important to be succinct. And in the Zoom call, when you want to talk, simply unmute your microphone and start sharing. And when you're done, just say I'm done or I'm complete. And then this is the other slide I wanted to review, which is, seems to be, it's evolving as I think a tool, if you will, or a reference for at least our thoughts as a team, as a group, on what it means to be a facilitator, to make easy, to render less difficult, to help bring about. And from last week's call, we were focused on, you know, being vulnerable to enable deep sharing. And so we added a little bit to some of the bottom of this. I'm just going to hit those points, which is, you know, we want to make transformational healing easy. You know, I think that's part of the role of the facilitator, is to make that easy for the participants. And down towards the bottom, we said, we added, you know, we are transformed as we facilitate transformation. And then I shared this with Steve and Joan, this Lao Tzu quote that seems to apply to facilitators. A facilitator is best when people barely know he exists. When his work is done, his aim fulfilled, they will say, we did it ourselves. So it's this idea of, you know, enabling from the background. And that was all from me. And I'll pass the baton to, well, any comments on either the guidelines or that one slide on being a facilitator?
Joe, one of the guys I worked with in my professional career had a sign above his desk. It's amazing what we can accomplish when we don't care who gets the credit. So that's, your quote was right on.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
I have a comment. I knew that I wanted to be at this group today for sure, but is this then the last one until September? That I'm just totally amazed by that.
Yeah, we feel like, I mean, you look at our numbers today, we're down to 7. And, a number of people have commented, and Joan and I and Steve have commented that, the summer's kind of a slow time. So we're thinking to take July and August off and reconvene in September. Do you have have we destroyed your day?
No. So 2 months off then. So really missing, say, 4 meetings, maybe 5, depending on how the Mondays all fall, and then back in on September. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I keep sending people to you. Obviously, they may or may not be actually joining with you, but I keep sending people to you. So hopefully, maybe more people will do that. So, and I also send out the recordings to the Course of Love people that I know. So I really liked your idea at the very beginning, saying, if you're listening to this, please let Joan know so that she can count. She can count those folks. So, okay, just as long as it keeps going, could maybe something that would help do it on a different day or time too. That's all. Of course, that's always an option.
Yeah, good. I was just going to say, yes, I think we need to reconsider that. What would be a good day? It seems like Monday is, a lot of people do have conflicts on Monday. And so we could be open to another day. I think it's always, well, let me back up. We're feeling rather complete, Joe and I, in terms of the content we've covered in this first facilitator, let's just say group, the first semester.
Right.
And so we'd like to begin again in September, a new semester, and we might have a slightly different curriculum. And I know one theme we have that we'd really like to get into is living the course of love. So going even deeper. And, this group has been beautiful, and I hope we have everyone coming back for it. And designed to make it even more interactive. So yes, yeah. So just take the summer for being renewed. I know I am. Yeah. I like that time.
How many of these have you done? Something like 8, maybe?
From March 4th all the way through June. So, okay. Yeah.
Maybe more than that.
About 8 meetings.
March, April, May, June. Yeah, 4.
Hey guys, if you're not talking, could you please mute? That'll make the recording a lot easier for people to listen to. There's background noise.
Somebody's got background noise.
Okay. Joan, I just had one other suggestion too then, is that of course when we were talking about that, it's for facilitators of a Course of Love. Are you open to having people that are just a Course of Love students without being facilitators start back up again? Because I know a lot of the people that I'm sending these to, half of them, well, I know 4 people that do Course of Love groups besides you and Joe, that are facilitating them. But then I send out the information to about another 20 Course of Love students beyond that. So I don't know if, anyway, just a thought there. And I've always felt like Sunday was an underused day, like Sunday late afternoon, early evening. is like a really good time to have a group because nobody ever has a group on Sunday evening. So just a suggestion too. Okay, and now I'm done.
Good. Okay. Yeah, we'll just put everything back on the table and get input from all of you as to what we would like to do next. How do we go deeper? And to answer your question about who participates, it's for facilitators of all kinds, ACIM, ACOL, and as well as people who facilitate perhaps other programs like attitudinal healing, Jerry Japolsky, that kind of program. We're open. And so again, with feedback, we can continue these programs. But the other thing, it's for those who wish to deepen and enrich their experience of ACOL. That is key. We're all facilitators.
Yeah, that's the point I make, is that even people who are not, quote, formally designated as a facilitator should still be thinking of themselves as a facilitator. We're all kind of should be aware of the spirit in the group and where are we and what's going on. So, it's beyond just formal designation.
Yeah.
Sorry, Joan, I interrupted.
No, that was okay. Lovely. And so I think, just keep sending your feedback. You have our emails, and if there are topics you'd like to have covered, and we'll also, we're saying it now, so people who are listening will listen to the recording. Please send us feedback, because we would like this Zoom group to really reflect what is coming up, what is rising within you in terms of your relationship with your groups, with ACOL, and your life in general. Now that's a big topic. So back to you, Joe.
Well, I'm going to be back to you if you want to do the opening meditation.
Okay. All right. So let's begin our session. Since we're talking about the 40 days and 40 nights, and how we might facilitate it. And I thought we would use day 23, and I would like everyone to just listen, because I've adapted day 23 for this meditation. And that day is called carrying. And notice it is 23. We've had 22 days on the mountaintop. And so now we are reaching out, going forward, realizing our potential, listening to the voice of the one in the many and the voice of the many in the one. So from Jesus, forget not that who you are is what you are here to make known, and thus you must be a being who knows love without fear, joy without sorrow, and life everlasting. You must be this. As air carries sound, as a stream carries water, as a pregnant woman carries her child. This is how you are meant to carry what you have been given. What you have been given is meant to accompany you, propel you, and be supported by you. You are not separate from what you have been given, and you do carry what you have received within you. The task before us now is to come to understand the means by which you will carry down from the mountain and onto level ground, the ground of the earth, the place where you are connected and interconnected to all that lives and breathes along with you. We are coming out of the clouds, out of the illusion, surrendering the mist that was all that separated one world from another. The clouds of illusion, even those that have gently surrounded our time together on the mountaintop, must now be surrendered. Much as a woman surrenders her body to the growth of the child within. It is a surrender to the forces that move inside of you. It is a knowing surrender to the unknown. It is a willingness to carry the unknown into the known, and the known to the unknown. Surrendering to the forces that move inside of you is surrendering to your own will. It requires full acknowledgement that you hold within yourself a will to know and to make known. This will is divine will, your will, Christ consciousness. It is alive, alive within you. All that is required is that you carry it with awareness, honor, willingness. From this will the new be birthed. So let us build our house on a mountaintop that communes with both earth and sky. And should we stand upon the edge, our choice is but to fly. But wait, before we take the air, let's go inside and see who's waiting there. So let us be the new.
Thank you. Welcome, Lauren.
So this, go ahead.
Okay, passing the baton to Steve. The Course of Love quotes. I can display them if you want.
Before we get started, Joan, I just wanted to comment, Joan, that there is such a feeling of peace in that message of being carried. I need do nothing. And
Yes.
thank you for that reading. Complete. You want to put the first slide up, Joe? Maybe before we do that, there are 5 quotes from the Course that we'll be looking at on the slides. And when Joe opens up the first one, I'll read it. We'll close those slides, and then somebody else might volunteer to read the second, somebody else the third, the fourth, and the fifth. So that's the process we'll follow. And then we'll have our questions.
So we'll be reading from the slides, not necessarily referring to the course.
Yes. That way we don't have to page through the book. So from day 1, paragraph 3, we are here on the top of the mountain together, beginning our work together. I am no longer your teacher, but there is a reason that you are here with me. You have been listening to my words, and these words are what have brought you here, not to a place, but to an ascended state. Without your acceptance of who I am, you will not fully accept who you are. Without your willingness to achieve this acceptance, you will not receive the secretive succession presented here. You can read of it still, but it will not convey to you what it will convey to those who have accepted me. You will return to level ground with eyes unopened and listen to parables once again and learn once again from the stories of others. Somebody like to volunteer for the second reading?
And ask Joan if she can mute. I think we're getting some network effect that might be from not having us muted.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Can you mute?
Oh, sure.
Okay, thank you. It'll help because we're getting a little bit of network effect or echoing happening.
I can read next.
Thank you, Lori.
You going to put it up on the screen, Joe, or somebody?
Yep.
Cool, thanks. You began your mountaintop experience with a companion who had offered himself as a teacher in order to bring you to the place of being willing to accept that teacher, to accept that a teacher was not needed. Let me start over. You began your mountaintop experience with a companion who had offered himself as a teacher in order to bring you to the place of being willing to accept that a teacher was not needed. He joined you on the mountaintop in order to prepare you for his departure, a departure from reliance upon him that would allow you to arrive at reliance upon yourself. This reliance upon yourself has been expressed as a dialogue taking place within Christ consciousness, the consciousness you share in union and relationship with all. You have now been told to own this dialogue and to realize that its wisdom is your own. Are you accepting this? Are you beginning to ready yourself to hear this voice as your own? To express the voice of Christ consciousness as only you can express it? Complete.
Thank you, Lori. Somebody volunteer for the third reading? Barbara?
What the mountaintop experience is helping you to see is that you are the experience. The mountaintop experience did not happen to you or happen separately from you. It has happened, and it is happening within you. You are the experience and the experiencer, the knower and the known. This joining is the point of the experience and the key to experiencing wholeness. You are my beloved. We have just shared a dialogue. Your heart has spoken to me, and I have responded. Love has responded. How now will you respond to love? You are.
Thank you, Barbara. Barbara,
that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could somebody read the 5th paragraph? Lemoyne, would you like to read?
Sure. Okay. You are in relationship now only with love, and so nothing will be hard for you. Desire an old pattern to be gone, and it will be gone. This little note added to the end of our mountaintop time together is only here to help you realize and accept that this will be so. Do not expect difficulties, and they will not arise.
Thank you. This morning when I woke up, that little inner voice reminded me that we have come into relationship with our own inward being and brought to this mountaintop. And it said, it's been sent in the form of love letters, that each of the 40 days is a love letter from that which loves us. And I guarantee you that wasn't a thought I think. Joe, you want to bring up the questions?
Sure. Well, I just said, there was one thought that came to me in one of the quotes. I can't remember exactly which one. Hey, Mark.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And that was the idea of, I mean, it relates to that quote we added in the facilitator slide around, you know, our job is to let the group realize that it's doing it on its own, that the group doesn't need us, you know, and it's this idea of obsoleting ourselves. And yeah, I think both courses talk about that the best teachers are ones who make it so that the student doesn't need them anymore. And I just think that's a really powerful idea, because it says, it calls us to trust that if we give of ourselves, everything's going to be okay. We don't need to worry about that. I'm complete.
Thank you for saying that, Joe, and I appreciate the quote. It's I saw that in the Tao book, the book of Tao, or whatever, you know, through my Tao studies, and it starts out with in the way they describe it, and it's really interesting, is there's a good manager, a better manager, and the best is from the quote that you said, is where the project is at hand, and when it is all complete, like Joe said, we all stand back and look at it and say, look what we have done.
Yeah.
And it's about unity, community and unity.
Yeah.
And I think it also goes to the time of the intermediary is over. The time of knowing is upon us.
Yes.
So
here are the questions that we want to, oh, sorry.
Yeah, you can leave that slide up and I'll just talk around some of this. The reason I asked that we consider the 40 days and 40 nights is that when I was first introduced to A Course of Love, there were no groups in San Antonio. And so I started my own personal studies and went through the 40 days, quote, on my own, and over a 40-day period. And it was, I'd say, the richest experience of my life. And when Jesus tells us that the purpose of this book was to bring us to our true identity, he didn't let me down. And I think it was the first time I actually knew what he was speaking of. And, you know, if I could just share 10% of that personal experience in a group, that would be lovely. And so, you know, I was hoping maybe some of you others have had groups that have gone through the 40 days. If we could share some of those group experiences and learn from each other. But in essence, how can we bring about the fullest experience in our groups of the 40 days? I'm only involved in one group right now, and that's Judy's. And we're in the first 5 days. And there was discussion about, initially when we were starting them, well, how do we do this? You know? And I had suggested that we do at least 5 days each week, and then we'd come back, kind of journal our experiences in them and bring them to the group and discuss. There was some resistance to that because the time of learning didn't feel like it was quite over yet. That, you know, standard operating procedure is you read a paragraph or two or the whole chapter and then you discuss. But to come back with personal experience felt to me to be difficult for some. And so we've had 3 different Friday meetings now in the days, and we're getting through a day and a half or 2 at each. And it's interesting in that they said, well, yes, I read day 2, but I read that on Monday, and here it's Friday, and I don't remember what it says. And so there's this loss of continuity or personal connectedness. And, you know, have you other facilitators experienced anything like it? I wanted to talk about maybe some of your personal experiences. And so maybe now we can get into those questions. That's kind of what my interest in my agenda was for bringing this dialogue up. Joan?
Well, my answer to your question is yes. I've been with a group that had a marvelous experience just focusing on the 40 days. There's something to be said for going over some things slowly, methodically, carefully. And there's also something to be said for going through quickly. They each have their pros and cons. I think most of the study groups we're used to, we read a bit and talk about it, then a week goes by and so forth. And those are really rich, I think, in terms of sort of coming to know the ideas, let's say. But then the downside is, I think what I heard you say, Steve, and I completely agree, that ego is pretty clever. And when it reads something quite so transformational, oftentimes it tries to reinterpret it into its old paradigm, into its old self. And the degree to which it does that is sort of okay, and the degree to which it doesn't, it sort of forgets or negates. Now, I'm not saying this is entirely true, but I've noticed this phenomenon about myself and others. I mean, so, you know, personally, I went through the whole book in 2.5 days. I'm a scientist and I'm pretty intense, but I found that to be wonderful because I wasn't reading it with the idea of understanding every word, every phrase, but just like it said, with an open heart and just, whoa, I think I had an experience similar to what you described, Steve. Okay, why am I bringing this up? About 3 years ago and 4 years ago, it was the same group. What we did was during Lent, the period around Easter, we gathered once a day for 6 days a week, took off Sunday, and spent an hour a day going over one of the days. So it was pretty intense. You know, the ego didn't quite have a chance to undo it. And it was wonderful. It was marvelous to a man, woman, everyone just thought it was absolutely stellar. And the talk was about vulnerability. Last time, I think it was 2 weeks ago. Same idea. If we're going into this, the ego doesn't have enough chance to cover its tracks, so to speak, and exposes itself. And of course, everyone, oops, but then after a while, when the group becomes really tight. So in other words, it's 40 days in less than 6 weeks. No, 7 weeks. So, yeah, not enough could be, and not too much could be said about that. And again, it's too hard to put into words without actually having the experience. But I'd strongly recommend, if any of you haven't been through something like that, to give it a try. Complete.
And Mark, how did you gather? By Zoom?
It was a telephone call.
Okay.
It wasn't face to face. I was involved in a weekly impersonal group and some. Joe, when did you start your Zoom group? How long ago was that?
I can't remember, probably 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay, so I think I had Joe's group was just getting fired up, so I was involved in that, an in-person group, and then this. But it only did it for 40 days. It was assumed that every participant had been through the text a couple of times and, in by themselves and in groups. So people were pretty well versed. But the ideas are so radical, as you know, Steve, like the concepts of spaciousness and how that relates to healing and so on. I mean, the ego can't identify with those concepts at all. So spirit really has to sort of saturate us to get us into that space.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So I'm taking notes, and they'll come out when the slides come out. But I wrote down one thing you said, Mark, which I wrote it down as be aware of the cunningness of the ego. Can you say how you noticed or experienced the ego kind of doing battle with you and during the 40 days?
Well, actually, it's not just during the 40 days. I mean, it's now. I mean, sure. I experience the same kind of phenomenon, I won't say ceaselessly, but periodically.
So how does it come up? How does it exhibit?
Okay, say everything's running along smoothly, and then some shock comes into my life, somebody being an asshole to me, or this hurricane last summer was a good example. And in an extreme case, it's, I think this course teaches us not to worship or get into fear, but we all have fear. I mean, how many on this screen have never been afraid? Raise your hand. Okay. So, I mean, we all experience fear, no matter how far into this we get. So I don't think that's what it really means. I think what it's talking about is don't identify with the fear as being real. In other words, have it, feel it, acknowledge it, don't deny it, experience it, and that kind of thing. And don't project, for sure, don't project it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Can I offer a personal experience?
Please.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing that, and Joe for asking. I recently have been experiencing, I've been saying the prayer from A Course in Miracles, I am here to be truly helpful, and the content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me, and I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal. And I'm paraphrasing just to be quick about it, but there's this peace and calm that I'm experiencing lately. And like you said, Mark, the ego is always there and so can trick us into the trickery of the ego. But Tuesday last week, I was trying to cut an avocado in half using a knife that I was unfamiliar with because I'm house sitting using other people's equipment, kitchen, and the everything slipped. The cutting board slipped. The avocado wasn't as ripe as I thought it was going to be, and I sliced my thumb, and it was profusely bleeding, and I was alone, and I just went, oh. And all these thoughts were flashing before me, and I was actually able to choose calmly what to do. And I'm not one to go to the doctors. I'm always healthy, whatever. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to emergency because I don't know how deep this is. I wrapped it with I just did the first aid thing for myself and held it tightly as I drove myself. I even thought to call a neighbor to help me, but I just thought I'm going to do this. And I went on my own. And then that was one thing. And then at my new job, it's very physical. I'm working at Amazon and I'm lifting a lot of heavy things, preparing bags and boxes for the drivers to take, to deliver the packages to the Amazon's customers. And the management is very young, in their 20s, and they're not trained, and they look for what's wrong, and they make enemy, it's them against the crew, and I'm part of the crew. And I've been tested and tested and tested to not attack back, if you will, because I've been picked on. I've been laser beamed, picked on by one of the little managers that nobody likes. And it's really interesting my mom always said, when the closer you get to God, the devil will pull you back. And it's true. Temptation to not think with God is an everyday occurrence, like Mark said. And I'm complete.
Thank you. So, Steve, I think he's...
Joe, you had your hand up earlier. Joan, you're muted.
I'll unmute you, Joan. I'm going to unmute you. We're battling the mute button.
Oh, are we there?
There you go. Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to share about how our group in Sedona did it. We've actually been through the 40 days and nights as a group twice. And the first year was in 2016. And we did like what Mark was talking about. We met fairly intensely as a group. And we were blessed with a situation of a meeting space where we could literally do that. And so for 4 days a week, we met and did a day, hopefully, or sometimes it was like the abundance, day 3 abundance takes 2 or 3 days sometimes. But it didn't matter the actual time, but so we experienced the 40 days and 40 nights together, really. It was intense. And just like Mark was describing, that intensity of the experience is wonderful. And then at the end, we celebrated by going to the mountaintop. There's an airport restaurant, and we celebrated up there on top of the mountain. And so it was just a wonderful experience.
And so, Joan, how did you facilitate that first passage?
Yes. We had different facilitators. We had, I think I may have done 2 days a week, and then we had 2 others. And perhaps, you know, if whoever was willing, we certainly called upon them. So, but it was just a commitment on all our parts to do that. And the fact that everybody, or not everyone, but say we had at least 4 facilitators for the groups, that was great. And we could get into the experience just more completely, fully.
Joan, what was your personal experience each time?
It was just so cohesive. I don't really remember it being a personal experience, actually. It was a unified experience. So we did feel the unity that was binding. We definitely were in union and relationship. And so while we were in the session, we existed that way. There was no friction, even though tough topics would come up. And sometimes not everybody would buy into them as to what was being presented. But everyone was held within that group inclusively. There was space for everyone, even those that felt that the days weren't meaningful for them. There were some it wasn't reaching. It was an experience perhaps they were ready for, but yet they still kept coming. And so, it was a rich experience, and I don't remember it being personal, though.
Shown, and how was that? How were those days facilitated? Did you read the days, or did they journal and kind of speak to their personal experience, or what was the process there?
We did read the days. Sometimes we would spend an extra day. We would read a paragraph at a time, sometimes. Other times, we would go through, especially one of the shorter days, we'd go through it, read the paragraph 3 times before we stopped to discuss, so that we let it sink in. And it does seem to be important that everyone does get a chance to read, to let those words touch their hearts. And so that was one way we did it. Yeah, we did not journal because we could meet so often. It was not as necessary.
And what was your second pass like?
Well, it was beautiful too. I guess I remember the first one best, though. The second one, again, was rich, but same way, same methods. And maybe we went a little, I think we definitely went a little deeper. The understanding was there in terms of the content. So
was it the same group of people?
Yes, pretty much. The core group was same. The core group was the same, just committed ACOL students, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Joan.
Thank you.
See, Joe, I just want quick clarification. You asked a question and maybe I didn't answer it very cohesively. What I was trying to express is that kind of reverting backwards, I'm talking about a general phenomenon. What I was trying to say is during the way we did this 40 days, that didn't occur. I won't say at all, but far less. My point being that the ego had less chance to kind of interpret things on its own terms. And actually, we didn't do much reading at all, either first year or second year. It was assumed that people had been through it a few times, and then it was assumed that people would read the day before the call and hope, preferably just right before it. And then it was more talking about experiential, more talking about experiences and difficulties or successes and how to integrate this into one's life. And it was very, so in the sense what Joan just said, it was very cohesive. And we did have the feeling like Jesus was really with us, you know, he had experienced 40 days, 40 nights. That's where it sort of gets its name. And you really had the feeling that he was right there with us. Just one other little point about this. The course itself talks about this kind of thing. I don't remember where exactly, but it talks about our worry that the ego has come to reclaim us, I think is the word it uses. Maybe that's in the time in between or something like that. But very quickly, a good metaphor that I could use for this is, you know, when we stare at a very bright light or a bright picture for 5 or so minutes, and then we look away and just look at a blank white wall, we see the image. I mean, we're not looking at it anymore, but we still see it. In other words, the ego is such an entrenched pattern into our thought system that even when we've changed our mind and try to look away, it's the pattern is still there, even though the belief or the reliance upon it isn't there. Still, the pattern remains. I'm complete.
Joe?
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to say, in the group that we're in right now, in both Lemoyne and Mark are in it, and Lori, we're consciously really taking our time. And we have an hour and a half long Zoom call. We may only cover 4 paragraphs. But the idea is that we really enter deep dialogue and we share experiences about the text that we read. And so that's the way we're currently approaching it. I'm complete.
Well, you just said the word text. Does that apply to the 40 days also, Joe?
No, it is during the 40 days. We're consciously really slowing down during the 40 days.
Okay.
Non-dialogue.
And still meeting once a week?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Barbara, Jeff, Lori?
I had something I wanted to share too. Is I wasn't part of Joan's group when they went through the 40 days. That was part of the time when I wasn't in the Sedona area. But I can tell you from the outside looking in, Joan, there were so many people, because I know so many of the people that went through that 40 days with you, that going away and coming back 6 months later, there was significant difference in many of the people. And of course, we do Course in Miracle groups too there, so there's just natural growth no matter what. But I could really see a difference when you're reading Course of Love and the level of understanding and the absolute willingness to throw out the words, to throw out the mental processing of the book, and to really just be in the energy of it, to be heart-centered and energetically focused. I, from that kind of unique perspective, really noticed that when I came back. So something about, hey, it works. I'm complete.
Thank you, Lori. Jeff or Barbara?
Well, I'll go ahead and our group is pretty young. We've been only going for about 3 months maybe. And aside from Karen, who's sometimes on this call, none of the other people had heard of it before. So, you know, I was really interested in how and to hear how you do it. And it sounds like having at least certain periods of intensity is really helpful. We only have like 6 people in our group, and right now one's out of town, and another one's having some medical issues, and someone else was out of town too. So that sometimes there's like 3 of us. So it's a little more intimate. And I think the good thing about that, those people are, even though they're new at this, are beginning to be a little more open to share experiences. And that's the part that I find most enriching. Although, again, having studied Course in Miracles for, gosh, I don't know, 25 years, and this may be 5 years before we started the group, you know, I'm a little bit more comfortable with the material. So it's a balance between trying to help people understand what the materials are and sharing experiences, and they're certainly not mutually exclusive. But I think we're in a little bit different place than the rest of you are with your groups. So it's helpful to hear how you guys are doing it and what works. And when we get to the 40 days and 40 nights, I'm thinking about maybe to do something a little more intense in terms of meeting like 3 or 4 or 5 times a week. So thanks, I'm complete.
Barbara, you had your hand up. Unmute, please.
Yes. In my experience, I'm in Joan's group, and I can't even express some of the feelings that come to me when I'm leaving that group and while I'm there. It's always such a heartfelt feeling when we're reading and discussing the term, after we discuss it. And the one thing that stands out in my mind and that I use a lot is the union and the mind and the heart being joined in wholeheartedness. And it has brought me to a different place in prayer, which is, would have opened up something inside of me that when I do pray from the heart. And I drop down into the heart and I open up to the will. You know, it's not my will. It's, I pray in the sense that for the highest good of everyone that I am intentionally thinking about. I do journal. And I probably will start journaling with my experiences, but every day I read something and I will write down what I feel is important for me to have in my mind and in my heart that day. And the ego is tricky, but I find for me, when I do my walking meditation, I am always in the presence of Jesus. And during the day, I will write down some mantra from the Course, and I bring it with me. And I try to remember that that's where my mind has to be or wants to be for the freedom and the wholeheartedness that is ours, all of ours, you know. We're so fortunate to be reading these books and hearing these words. I'm so forever grateful, really am. And, and I know that we're ministers when we go out among our friends and our relationships with everyone. And I always find that I don't have to talk about it as much as I have to live it. And when you stand up and you're in the midst of a social gathering and people are not, reading the Course material, and there are things out there that are really, up in the air. I feel that being a minister of what we're learning is just to be in that space of love. And no matter what goes on, that's my biggest, goal, is to show up that way. It doesn't have to be words. It just has to be that energy that you are able to, give. You give that energy out. I'm complete.
if I could go back to my own personal experience, and it was actually in hindsight that I felt that that journey up the mountaintop began on page 1 of A Course of Love. And you just were very gradually taken up this mountain. And it was so gradual, it was like the ego didn't even notice it. But if he had given us days, for me, if he had given me days 36 through 40 first, I'd have been dead in the water. That's the teachings and what was being observed as a knowing then would have been more like that first reading. It would have just been words, and they would have all sounded nice, and there'd been a goal to work toward or something of that nature. And the personal, intimate relationship would not have been made available. But it was so slow that it was like the ego fell asleep, didn't even notice. Did somebody else have their hand up?
I think Lori has her hand up.
Lori?
I don't know if you can, no, the other Lori.
I always, yeah, I always have my hand up. I just wanted to say to everyone, thank you for sharing your stories. I agree with what many people have said, is that once you get some of the basic concepts, or even the more highly developed concepts down mentally, it is so much about experience. What am I doing in my daily life? What's my experiential life look like? Because really, we have 24 hours. Sometimes we only have 23. The 24 hours in a day, what are you spending all those minutes doing? What are you thinking of? What are you focusing on? What are you creating? What are you letting go of? That's my big thing. What am I letting go of, releasing, to let something more highly evolved than me come through? To truly let the Christ come through and work through me. And I just want to say, I love what you said, Barbara, about ministering. We're not on pulpits anywhere, but we're ministering to our friends, to our family, to the people we meet at the grocery store, to the people in our groups. That just really struck me, is that really our ministry is just our everyday relationships with people. And just thank you for sharing that, Barbara, who is, you guys know Barbara by now, but she's just a love. She's just a big love. So I'm so glad to be here with her too. But yeah, just that living, it's the living experience. The words mean nothing at a certain point. It's what are you actually, how really, how are you actually living? All right.
In the spiritual teachings my wife and I were involved in before we came to A Course in Miracles, that teacher had often said, don't believe anything I tell you or anything you read. It must be experienced. And it's only through that experience do you then know. You know, you can't argue with yourself after that experience. And I've never forgotten that. Joe, maybe we could bring up that question slide again.
A second. Lori Parle has her hand up. I don't know if you can see that, but I see it.
I don't see that, yeah.
You do see it?
No, I don't.
So I see it. Now I've got to interrupt and say, okay, Lori's got her hand raised.
Thank you. Lori and Barbara and everyone that shared personal experiences. And Barbara, you put in expressions that I left out of my stories, especially at work. And Lori LaValle, oh my goodness, while I'm walking around, at my Amazon job, and all these egos are running rampant, if you will, I am open to release, Lori, like you said. Things are coming to me and I'm recognizing what other people are doing that I used to do. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm so glad I don't do that anymore. And then, like Barbara said, ministering and then smiling and just offering love and being present. And today, especially, I was just like, I told myself, was so happy and excited that I'm being in the present moment. And I kept asking the Holy Spirit, because today was really chaotic with the sorters have to put our stuff together that we put on carts and then deliver to the drivers. And it was, I've never, in 5 weeks that I've been there, I've never experienced such chaos. And I could tell that I had to consciously manage myself to stay in love. And I called on the Holy Spirit by name. Holy Spirit, just, and God knows what you want. And so I don't have to say any words, but that's my prayer, Barbara, just to call out and ask for guidance. And it becomes easier and easier, my willingness and commitment to only think with God. And I'm learned so much from everyone who shares their personal experiences. Lori, like you said, walking around, and Barbara ministering. I love that, because in A Course in Miracles, my mind is part of God's. I am holy. So thank you. I want to be that for everyone. Amen. I'm complete.
Joe, maybe we can put the questions slide back up this time and just kind of review them. I think we've touched on all of them.
As I threw these questions together, I came up with number 4 and 5, and it's maybe more of a suggestion than a question, because it is, I think it's important for us, it's important for me as a facilitator to kind of let the group lead. I can throw out ideas on how we might approach the 40 days, but I think it really needs to be hearing the voice of the collective and letting that define that's just my opinion.
Being present to the moment, and it's an organic growth.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any other closing comments?
Joe, I do. Joe, could you also put up that slide, or just tell me what was that second piece that we read? It was on the first slide, the bottom, but where did that piece come from? Because there was something in there so good I wanted to look it up.
So this is on the facilitator slide, being a facilitator?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a quote from Lao Tzu where I replaced the word with facilitator.
I think she was talking about the reading.
Not that one.
Day 21.
Right, where we actually started reading 40 days and miscellaneous quotes from all over. So
these two?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to write down the number of the last. Oh, yeah, go back.
Back one, yeah.
There you go. Thank you. Okay.
These will be sent out.
Day 21.
He's going to send them to us too, Lori.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I didn't hear that part. Thank you.
There's always the slides always are. I put them on the website, and then Joan sends a link out when we send out the recording.
Lori,
so I just did all that work for nothing.
No, you have it sooner.
That's right. That's right. And thank you, Lori, for what you shared. Amazon has got to be one of the best churches to practice forgiveness of any place, anywhere, ever. Good for you.
Oh, God bless you. It has been an amazing ride. And yeah, thank you.
Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add to the discussion? Lemoyne?
Yeah. for me, that middle one, the middle question has been somewhat of a struggle. The thing of how to take this into life, right? And it's not like it's lost, but then what's the expression? Maybe. How do you bridge that experience? And one thing I discovered in trying to prepare for this is, well, it's it's not as hard as I was like ready to make it, maybe. But one thing I discovered in preparing for this is that the first dialogues, those 17 things, that chapters that come before the 40 days, they've really got a lot of straight stuff in there. And it may be that it's just appearing to me differently now that I've been through other parts of it, the 40 days. I've worked with that multiple times. But if I had gone back to the beginning of the dialogues and gone through that, I think that would have assisted me. So it may be that, if people identify certain areas of struggle, that there may be assistance in the earlier dialogues as well. I think that's what I have to add. And I agree with Joe that we are taking our time on the 40 days, and we'll rewind several paragraphs to get to a good starting point, and get to the material that's new in the group with some momentum in the particular reading that we're in. And I'm complete.
So I have a question for you, Steve. You were the one who asked for this, and I'm just wondering if you found this dialogue within our gathering to be helpful in terms of other perspectives on approaching the 40 days.
Yeah, I think what I come away with is in a space of wholeheartedness. It doesn't matter how they're done. And if you did 2 paragraphs in a 1-hour session, you were just fine.
That's a good summary.
I really appreciate everybody's input on this. Thank you very much. And I know Judy will feel the same way.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Joan and Joe, for making the space available, and Steve for your facilitation. Sorry I was late, but anyway, it was just wonderful. Thank you.
Well, we've got a closing meditation, and you weren't here when we said we're going to take the summer off and reconvene in September.
Oh, okay.
You'll see that in email. But
All right.
Steve, do you have a closing meditation?
Closing meditation is actually from the epilogue, paragraph 9. Reads, "For as long as you know that what I am telling you is true, for as long as you carry this knowing within yourself, this is how long the eternity of being will be for you. There is no one to turn out the lights but you. Drift from knowing to unknowing. Close your eyes, and you can experience the stillness of not knowing, the rest and calmness of nothingness. You can experience non-being, and in a similar fashion, drift as gently as your own desire arises into all being. Mainly, you will enjoy being who you are. You will be happy, you will be content, and you will know unerringly how to act naturally from your being."
Thank you. And we'll know how to facilitate naturally from our being. So during this time off, be thinking about your input for this time together in a very wide range of considerations. Do we stop? Are we done? Do we continue? Do we change the format? Do we, what would be the next topic if we continue? You'll see a list of what we had before as some topics we were working through. But consider that over the next couple months and we'll reconvene. I'm complete.
Joe, can I add something to what Lemoyne had raised? And that's taking this from the mountaintop back to level ground or back to the valley. And something I have found that really helps me is the symbol of the circle and the dot. Not ever having left the circle. And when I find myself forgetting, I simply remember, go back to the circle and experience that unknowable.
Yeah.
I'm complete. Thank you, Joe.
Well, thanks, everybody. Have a great summer.
Namaste.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to miss you. And Judy and her husband are in my prayers. Send them love for Amas.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Lori.
Will I see you in September?
Sing it, Joe. Take it away.
Or lose you to a summer love.
You're
Don't
getting
take
better
it
and better.
personally, but I'm headed out.
Have a great summer.
Bye.
Go
everyone.
enjoy, everyone.
Thank you, Joan.
Go enjoy.
Pulling
And
us together.
Joan, can you stick around for 1 minute here?
Sure.